my mind kept thinking, who do you think you are that you can write in English? That was the voice in me.
This is Daring to Tell, the podcast where writers read their true stories. Then we talk about writing and life. I am your host, Michelle Rado.
Nothing's gonna make me brave. And nothing's gonna make me brave. Nothing's gonna make me brave except doing what makes me scared.
In 1993, I got a phenomenal opportunity, which I scarcely realized at the time. I pitched my radio station to produce an hour-long radio documentary on the little-known musician and writer Nicholas Slonimsky. As I think about it now, it strikes me as uncanny how that project contained so much that would be echoed in life later on for me, and in fact, to this very podcast episode. Nicholas Slonimsky was a little-known figure with a significant impact to music and to the music scene in Boston, particularly in the 1920s. He was going to turn 100 in 1994, and so I pitched it as a feature for him on the occasion of his 100th birthday. The station liked it. They agreed to send me to Los Angeles, where he was living, to do a few days of interviews. I had done primary research on him as a project in my music history class in my senior year of college. That was when I had learned about him, and I had read how he had become the rehearsal pianist for the renowned Boston Symphony Orchestra conductor Serge Koussevitzky. That story had a rather interesting and unfortunate ending. After that, Slonimsky founded the Chamber Orchestra of Boston in the late 1920s. He conducted the premiere of Charles Ives' Three Places in New England that was too difficult for any other conductors to take on at that time because it had a section of the orchestra playing in two different and competing time signatures at the same time. Slonimsky was a huge champion of modernist music, and his enthusiasm won me over. More than the music even, I loved the stories I dug up about him. I learned how the piano saved his life. He was born in Tsarist Russia and had to flee during the Russian Revolution. He then landed in Paris in the 1920s, where he first met Koussevitzky. Then he came to the U.S., later turned to writing. Later in his life, made his home in Los Angeles. He also met Frank Zappa and had a cat I met who was called Grody to the Max. He was quite a character. And now, as I think back to that time, I have this memory of me sitting on an airplane from Boston to LA, reading his autobiography called Perfect Pitch, immersing myself in his words and his life beyond all the research I had done on him in college. And that feels very familiar to me. It feels like it could have been the very early incarnations of a model for daring to tell. The other reason that Slonimsky resurfaced in my brain is because of the writer I am talking with today, Ching Ching Tan. She moved from her country of origin, which was China, also landed on the West Coast, and also found herself to be a writer too. Not in her native language, but after learning English and moving to the U.S. at the age of 32. I first met Ching Ching in a year-long memoir class we were in together with 6 other writers. One of the first details I learned about her is that she had a 12-year career in radio in Guangzhou, China, before she ever came to the U.S. So when this background was revealed, we both knew we had lots to talk about. I am so excited to share this conversation and her writing with you today. As I've had the chance to do from time to time before, is share an unpublished manuscript with you. I just love it when I can share something that you will not be able to hear or read anywhere else. It's an important story, artfully told, and that I know deserves to be in print. And in this effort, I genuinely hope we can help her find a publisher who will put it out into the world. I don't think there's too much I really need to explain to you about Ching Ching Tan before we begin, because explaining is core to what she has to say. One thing I will say is that in her reading, she describes the components of a traditional Chinese character as opposed to the simplified version, which is something she will also read about, for the word listening. I am trying to figure out right now a way to share this Chinese character with you, probably in a link in the show notes so you can see what it looks like as she describes it pictorially. The only other thing I will let you know about Ching Ching Tan is that today she's a professor in the Department of Communication Studies at San Jose State University and living in the Bay Area of California. So with that, I am very pleased to introduce to you a most special writer and former broadcaster, Ching Ching Tan, and her memoir manuscript called An Extra. I always gush on this podcast about my guests, and I will gush about you, Ching Ching. But we were just talking a little bit before I hit record, and as we'll certainly hear a lot about today, two radio gals chit-chatting it up
Yeah.
about things. And what is it about when that red light goes on and you hit record? Changes everything.
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm thinking of the word performance. So there's another way to put it, right? Life is a performance, there's no such a thing as not performing. People, I
Right.
remember that was one of the earliest theory. I was in the communication studies. We were geeky about this concept of a performance. We were like, no, I don't think life is a performance because, when I sleep, I am relaxed and all that, I don't perform. And then, I remember our advisor, she was talking about, just think about you get up, you walk out of the door, the thing you dress up, the way that you want it, maybe tuck your tummy a little bit, all that kind of thing is part of putting yourself in the society and making yourself, a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's like a normal human thinking about performance. But then B's one is literally performing, the moment you hit this red button, and that's heightened sense of a performance. But in the way that is because I had a long career, 12 years of career of radio. I think that on air performances
Yeah.
shaped me back to the person in real life, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
as in like not pressing the red button and how I
Ah,
behave in a way.
right,
So it's
right,
like I cannot. At some point, I felt that can I tell which one is which? My real
right.
life also speak in the way that it's like a radio, or
Yeah.
behave in a way like a radio. I think it comes back over time though.
Yeah. So did you find that when you were on the radio versus off the radio,
Hmm.
were those two personas the same?
Um, Immediately, no. So I started my radio career at age 19. I thought the first few years the performance was really intense. I was really working hard to put up that performance front, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
like for example, my producer would say, this way of speaking, you should speak from your, how do you say this, belly, from belly?
Yeah, your
There's,
diaphragm, your
yeah,
belly
yeah,
from
in
your
Chinese,
like
there's
the
always,
deep breathing. Yep.
yeah. So I didn't know those things, and I start to learn. It's like it's feeling like you're pressing down your tone of
Yeah.
voice to the
Right.
place where you can. And then he always said to me, "Oh, if you do that, you speak for 2 hours, you don't feel tired. You don't feel like you're like hurting
Right.
your throat and all that kind of thing." And I
Right.
learned that, and then not. right away. But in a few years, I realized I talked to other people in the street with that voice.
Oh, right,
So,
right.
so do I, so who is who, right?
Right. So you brought your radio self to your off
Definitely,
radio self. Yeah.
definitely. I
Interesting.
believe I behave the way that I learn from the radio, the way I should behave, and then bring it to real life as well. So it's hard to separate at that point. And then I was young, I was in the 20s. I don't have a lot of packages, to, okay, so here I should do this way, here I should do this way. And then at
Right.
that time, I felt I was like pretty much blending myself in different aspects of life and then just bringing pretty much the best self I could bring in front of other people or just, to date
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
um, and I thought radio really shaped me, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And likewise, we've talked about this a little bit, but radio really shaped me too. And I have sort of this consummate respect for all the people who were on air because I was not on air. And again, we're going to hear a little bit more about the
Hmm.
radio stuff later on. But I think because I was not on the air and everything that I did was support
Hmm.
for people on the air in terms of production or writing things or like putting together spots and all, like all that production support stuff and doing it like so that the person on the air would be ready to go because as
Yeah.
you know the clock is everything, like you got to be ready to go when it
I
starts.
have I have so much respect for the roles you play, for people like you. It's a I remember I did some evening and night show like 11 p.m. to 1 kind of thing, and there was one person, one technical person, just one,
Mm-hmm.
sitting there was just supporting me, technically supporting me.
Right, right,
But I thought he or she is supporting me more than in the mere technical way. And it's just
right,
it's
right,
so important for me to see that person there, and it's like
right, right.
reassurance.
Well, that's nice to hear because,
Oh,
sometimes I feel like I'm just the little mouse that runs in and out of the studio and does all the, like make sure everybody has everything they need to do their show.
you
But
appreciate.
yeah, no, it's very
Appreciate.
fun. It's very fun to talk radio. So
Yeah.
I will continue our introduction in
Mm,
that you and I were in a year-long memoir writing class together, and you grew up in China. You
mhm.
lived in China until the age of 32, which is sort of the baseline for the story and for what
Yeah.
we're going to hear. And so the manuscript that you brought to our class is called An Extra. And
Mhm.
that's, we're going to hear a few excerpts from that today that you will read. But of course, finding out that you were on the radio in China, I was immediately like, oh, we have
Same
to talk.
thing. Same thing. I don't remember. I think before seeing your manuscript, we were already talking about the background. It was like, really?
I
Michelle?
know. I
I
know.
know I would be friends with her right away. There's
Exactly. And
something
we didn't.
special about us. I know that.
Yes, and we were both I was 19 also when I got my job in radio. So it really shaped who I am. I mean, it
Hmm.
very much shaped who I am. And
It
it's funny cuz
yeah.
now doing this podcast,
Yeah.
me sitting in front of this microphone, do you know what I have had to go through in my brain to be like, "Oh my god, no, I'm the one talking. Like I have to figure this all out. Like this is a whole new
Yeah.
it's the one part of it that I never did, and I was honestly not really permitted to be on the
You
radio
are
from my
wonderful.
earliest days. So I think whatever happens to you when you're young and you're learning a craft, you're learning a career,
Hmm.
the things that you're told and the ways that you learn how it all works become quite ingrained in you. And so you live in that box, if I might use
Yeah.
that description
Yeah.
a little bit. So we both are stretching outside of our boxes, and that might be a good way to get started. I want to also say, in addition to having your manuscript, which I am assuming you're still shopping for an agent at this point. Is that correct? If it's
At this
okay for
point,
me to ask?
actively, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I typically am not the person who reads off people's accolades, but I am going to do that for you because you have a couple of things related to this manuscript in particular that people should know about, which is that you were the first runner-up with Red Hen Press for the Women's Prose Prize Award for this manuscript and extra. And I just want to, again, bring all the attention and kudos to you for this, because that's really something. This is an absolutely gorgeous manuscript, and people will get to hear a little bit about it. And
Yeah.
congratulations, big time, because that's a really
Thank you.
very
Thank
well earned. You also had an essay in the New England Review, and that was from the manuscript as well, correct?
you. Yes.
It's called
Yes.
How Do I Explain Myself?
Yes.
Do you want to just tell me a little bit about, maybe tell me about that essay? Because that also helps to
Yeah.
set up where we're going today with listening to some of your.
Oh, the background of that essay is actually quite difficult in the sense that, so I don't know if you are familiar with this writer's like a kind of unsaid rules right now when we talk about in writing, writers shouldn't explain too much.
Right.
It's readers' responsibility, or whatever you want to say it, to figure it out, because you over explain it, that leaves no mystery, or also undercut, this
Yeah.
special value, or whatever, whatnot, this writer's
Right.
identity,
Right.
and that. So that was the very early struggle of my writing, because I thought I really explained a lot.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, I shouldn't do that, but then I am doing it. I feel like an impulse has been doing this to explain on and on. But then I thought, you know what? If my impulse is this, there is a reason for that. What does it look like? What does it look like if I cannot resist this impulse? So that I realized this piece is for me to overcome, not like you have to do that in order not to do it. You
Yes.
have you have to explain it so much, so thoroughly. Okay, so if I were to explain, this is how I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it fully, thoroughly, like extensively, and then maybe I can breathe a little bit and I can choose if I wanted to explain too much or explain just a little, or
Hmm.
not explain at all. So
Right.
that was my thinking behind it. It was a lot of struggle, because that was during the pandemic time. I was pretty much, thrown out of this very comfortable bubble of the California liberal environment, and I was in connecting with different communities in the country, and I noticed myself explaining in order
Hmm.
to exist at all in any,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
environment. So I thought, you know what, I have to write about it. How do
Right.
I write about it? That's the essay,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. It's kind of a funny question because it's explaining about how to explain. So
Yeah, it's called
sort
meta
of
explanation.
meta self-referential kind of
Yeah.
question. But the other thing that I always like to find out from people is just about writing itself, and how did you get started with writing? I mean, and again, for a little bit of just foundational information, I think we
Mhm.
said you came to this country when you were 32 years old.
Mhm.
You grew up in
Southern China,
Guangzhou,
Guangzhou,
southern. Say it again.
Guangzhou, Guangzhou.
Guangzhou. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say it right. I'm close.
Canton. That's the old way of saying it. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Canton. But I think Canton is mostly for the province, for the region. Guangzhou is
Right.
the,
Okay.
yeah.
Southern China.
Yes.
Grew up, and as we said, 19, you were on the radio.
Hmm.
Okay, so was writing a part of your life in your childhood or in China at all?
I think I am just like anybody who needs just a journal or to jot down something, but not like rigorously have to. I mean, sometimes I would write a few things and then I put down this journal like probably a few months and I never touch it, a year even. But it's not like I am so, oh, I have to use this thing to express myself. It wasn't like, I
Right,
wasn't like that. And I also
right.
had an episode I think you read it as well. I had an episode of my mom taking, reading my diary when I was 14, 15. So basically I just like, okay, I'm done. I'm not writing because,
Oh,
someone's going to read my
yeah.
work and then it's going to, so,
Yeah. That's
so
very
yeah.
intimidating. Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're not allowed to write, that gives you more incentive to write later. Maybe that's planted
Actually,
a
that's a
seed.
good point. Yeah, yeah. You're like, "You can't
Yeah,
do this." It's like,
yeah,
well, maybe I
yeah.
have to."
But radio gave me some kind of expression, right? So I didn't
Yes, right.
know, I was young, naive, and all that kind of shallow and all that kind of thing. So I thought, I have my expression already, and I felt I didn't feel unsatisfied, within, inside me. I didn't need to write at that time so much. But coming to America, oh, that's different. I mean, every single day you feel that you can't make people understand, and just nothing. Like, okay, I know that I'm presenting myself, but the version that I am being understood is not me. So that gives a big
Mm.
gap for me to fill.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I didn't have a language to do it.
right.
That's
So did
another.
you write when you first had that disconnect of communication being in a new
Mm,
country,
mm.
would you write in Chinese? Would you, like, explain yourself to yourself?
So, um, so you can only look back and explain, right? During those
Yes, right.
period, you are in the absolute unknowingness of chaos, of like I say in Chinese, we're in the cloud. You just don't
Mhm.
see, you don't know, you
Right.
don't, and you feel like you need something, but you don't have tools, and but you don't know how to reach for tools. There was like a lot of like a long period of time of confusion, and you don't know how much longer this period is going to be. It's 10 years probably of
Yeah,
that time, yeah. So I switched between writing a little bit notes in Chinese and then notes in English. Nothing felt satisfying because writing in Chinese in this environment, it's not natural anymore because I don't hear it.
right,
And
right,
I am not, among a lot of Chinese people as well because I really wanted to learn English. So I'm in this English listening environment, in sound environment, but I
right.
can't get there. So there is a
Yeah,
very long process of very muddy
right,
uh,
right.
confusion. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think that I have been most drawn to in what you write about is that in-betweenness of place and how there can be such vast stretches of time
Mm.
where we're kind of like don't know what's happening between a then and a now
Yeah.
until there's so much, like, as you say, in the cloud, or I would maybe say in a fog,
Yeah.
like, you have this
I don't
nether
know.
space, and then you suddenly realize you're somewhere else, and you realize, "Oh, I'm not from
Yeah.
that anymore," or that that is so far in the past that
Yeah.
it has enough, distance behind you that you can sort of see it more
Yeah.
clearly in a way that you never did, and that's something that comes out really well in the way that you write.
I think it's a accumulation, really. So, like those years of confusion, of like a muddy thoughts without language. I had feeling, but there's no language for feelings, and I don't remember those feelings anymore because I didn't write down those feelings.
Right.
Uh, but then, once I started, by the way, started to the way I started to write was really an accident because I was a good student in the master program of communication studies. I wrote, but then, writing thesis, writing a scholarly paper, you're just following
Right.
directions and write
Yeah,
about
like a
things that
format.
exactly. Okay, what do you
Yeah.
want me to write? I'm going to submit that to you. That kind of. So it's like maybe there's
Right.
a little bit something from within me, but it's not so much. I would say it's like not like okay, I need to write this.
Mhm.
So I never had the need to write until the last semester of the MA program I just sat in one of the classes that I wasn't taking because one of the authors, he really didn't understand how much he's has influenced me. Andrew Lam. He showed up reading his own books, talking about refugee experience and Vietnamese diaspora. And then I was shocked. I was shocked to hear his accent. And I was like, it was just blew my mind to hear someone who has an accent. I don't know why my brain was thinking that way. So you have an accent, I have an accent, you're the successful writer. Really? Can I also write?
Yeah.
So that was 2015. And then my curiosity really just began in that class. But then he also was going to offer a seminar of nonfiction writing in the next semester before I graduated. So that's how everything started. I was just
Wow.
thinking if I didn't go that day, I don't know if you are talking with
Yes.
me today. Yeah,
Wow. That's really something because there are those days, those like pivotal days where
yeah,
suddenly you see someone or something that happens to you and you go, I mean,
to-
it's just amazing that you saw someone who was an example for you of, yes, I could do this,
yeah.
which is always why it's so
I
important for us
think,
to see ourselves somehow.
yeah. I told him after. I told him later, and then he thought this is a weird reason to to. I don't even know if it's even appropriate to tell people you have accent. So I
Right.
thought that's really rude to
Am I
say it,
supposed
but
to say this? I
yeah,
know, like, what are we allowed to say? I know, those are big questions.
right. I really couldn't hide it because this is really the main shock for me. Really? I mean, now I'm looking back and I was like, of course, having an accent, of course you can still write, but I didn't know that.
Right,
I didn't know this is possible for anybody. But he was like, really? That's it no, it didn't make him feel like any value. I mean, I don't know, I
right,
cannot
right.
speak for him, but it didn't make him feel like, okay, I'm so happy. I don't see his face like
He
that, so I'm
wasn't
not
like,
sure.
"What? What are you talking about? I don't have an
I
accent."
know, I
And
know, I'm
an
sorry,
accent
Andrew.
is such, subjective, is that the right word? Like a
Yeah, yeah,
it's like, well, I have an accent to you,
exactly.
or I
You
have
did
an
a good
accent
point.
to someone else, and
Yeah,
it is an interesting question. Well, I'm so glad you went that day and started writing. I mean, I just find it fascinating. What is the thing that sparks us to realize we want to start putting
yeah,
something down
yeah.
on
Choosing
paper?
writing as an art form. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm going to say one other thing before I have you read, because I actually think, to your point about explaining, I don't think there's a lot we should explain
Hmm.
about what you're going to read because it's very becomes self-evident of what this is about.
Mm.
But what I will say, and because part of what you're going to read has a visual
Hmm.
context in the manuscript, which our listeners obviously will not be able to see, of Chinese characters. And also, you set up this grid of what you would use to write when you were little, like learning how to write the characters. And it reminded me of the
Hmm.
paper that we would have when I was in first grade. And it was, two lines with a dotted line in the middle,
Okay.
and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
would
yeah.
have our really big we had these big fat blue pencils that had no erasers on them for whatever
Oh,
reason. And you were supposed to learn the cursive, learn the letters, learn what goes up halfway, what goes up the full way. So what you're going to read from and
hmm.
describe to us is a Chinese character version of this, which is a big square, and instead
Yeah,
of just long strings of lines, which we'll learn what that can be referred to in
yeah.
Chinese, which is very amusing. And then versus these boxes. So
Yes.
we all have our ways that we learn how to start
Hmm.
writing, and that's going to be some of what we're going to hear from.
Yeah, yeah.
So whenever you are ready, we will hear Ching Ching Tan reading from an extra.
Okay. I am ready. Chicken intestine. I picture my birth city, Guangzhou, China. A group of men, maybe in their 40s or 50s, sit low on small wooden stools, circling around plastic table. only slightly taller than the stools. They lift one leg and rest a foot on their stools. One or two men rest their chins on their knees. The table must have been outdoors for years, the cheapest plastic but durable enough to withstand wind sweeps and rainfalls. A typical subtropical weather drill in southern China. Its washed gray condition tells me that it could have been any color when it was new. Now it's dented and cracked in the middle. But the cigarette holder is placed properly and undisturbed. The men chit-chat in Cantonese about nothing really, maybe grumbling about the dickering negotiation of a 10 yuan transaction with a customer. They sell low-cost merchandise that we call 出口轉內銷, export turned domestic sales, suggesting that the products were supposed to have been sold overseas. Locals favor this type of offering as it upholds a higher international standard. One guy bites a still-lit cigarette and yells, 丢盖肠子, fuck chicken intestine. Excuse my French. Wait, excuse my Chinese? He's not actually talking about the intestines of a chicken. It's a snap phrase for frustration in my language. He's trying to read the instructions on a package, but everything is written in English. He can't understand. He's irritated. English as a lingua franca in today's increasing globalization creates overwhelming chicken intestines on screens, internet, or traditional TV, and on the packaging of merchandise. You can't avoid it. English is everywhere. I never use this phrase chicken intestine, but the image keeps knocking at my door. In any language, words signal class and status. In my mind back then, the phrase signaled low in Cantonese, countryside and street low. In my home, we never would have sat with our knees raised to the table like that, nor spoken in certain ways. It simply wasn't done. I wonder why the image of this man reappears to me again today. It may be that, to explain my roots, I have to look all the way down, past my once snobbish gaze. Only through penetrating the earth can I ground my thinking. Can I decipher? Can I and my being possibly cohere? In the Cantonese imagination, chicken intestine mimics the shape of English writing. Considered a cursive is to juxtapose the two written languages and find nothing in common, only differences on all counts. It's our sense of pride rooted from the distinctive square-shaped Chinese character, the pictorial depiction of meaning that carries out vivid and tangible imagination. It's this culture's self-admiration that, unlike the curvy lines to form shapes and sounds, each Chinese word contains an image or multiple images to tell the story. The traditional writing of Ting, listening, for example, tells us listening is king, that to listen, not only does it take physical ears, but it involves 10 eyes to imply a tremendous concentration, and one heart as wholeheartedness in the act of listening. What wisdom a single character has shown. I want to believe that learning to write words such as Ting, stroke by stroke, teaches us to be better listeners. Although I can't take a part of all characters and learn about each one of the stories behind them, it humbles me to explain listening to my fellow Americans, to my students in my communication classrooms by drawing out the image of the character. It never fails me that each time a student will ask, how many of us truly listened today? And this is only one word. There are 70,000 Chinese characters. The system was so complicated, which means elitist, that only 20% of the population in China was literate when the People's Republic of China was founded in 1949. Mao Zedong reformed and simplified Chinese characters in the 50s. The simplified version of listening contains 口, mouth, on the left, and the word jin, a weight measurement equal to 500 grams, on the right. There's a Chinese idiom, 斤斤计较, to mean fussing over the minor matters. Does listening today mean something different than in the past? Does the mouth, in the simplified character, give us permission to be more verbal while listening? Does the character unwisely simplify the act of listening, so instead of taking the time to listen from the heart, we haggle over trivia? This simplification results in the loss of the original storytelling. But because of the simplification of thousands of Chinese characters, the entire population quickly became literate. In 2 decades, 80% of the people in Beijing could read a newspaper. Today, the estimated national literacy rate is 95%. So what is better, traditional Ting or simplified Ting? Do we have to trade our heart for a mouth to be widely understood? Simplified or traditional, learning to write Chinese takes dedication. In school, we learn to write using repetition and drills with practice sheets. You need about 3,000 characters in your brain to start reading the newspaper, but to pursue intellectual reading and writing, at least 8,000. I remember tracing each stroke of a newly learned Chinese character in the square box and repeating it so many times that it became second nature. We write characters stroke by stroke. Each word has its own structure built from the foundation. There is no shortcut, only perseverance. Sometimes we learn through Chinese calligraphy, my favorite of all. First, I learned how to hold the writing brush. The specific way of holding is crucial. Older generations remind the young that by establishing a good habit, you've already succeeded halfway. I might have been 6 or 7 years old, my little right hand holding a brush, wrapped by my father's big palm to practice the grip of this ancient writing tool. His command, steady and controlled, guided me first, and then I traced alone. Then later, writing without a sketch, without a layout, all on my own, like life. In this tracing and mimicking, I learned to write 中国共产党万岁, Vive la Chinese Communist Party, 中华人民共和国万岁, Vive la People's Republic of China, 毛主席万岁, Vive la Chairman Mao. Chinese calligraphy demands many details. You are supposed to sit up straight. The brush should be held strictly upright. You should hold the brush rather firmly, but keep your arm relaxed. In the classroom, pupils cleared everything from the desk during the calligraphy sessions. We placed the ink bottles on the right corners, but not too close to the edge, or they might fall. The brush holder was next to it to rest the brush whenever needed. If you happened to walk by, you would see a uniform posture, all sitting straight and squarely in their place. The place smelled of ink and exuded nothing but tranquility. The lampblack or soot odor might be unpleasant for others, but for me is mildly soothing. Silence was enforced, as any sound would interfere with the flow. We learn to be calm and composed at an early age, that something can be made and can be unbroken as long as you have peace. Today, whenever I meditate, I remember that space. I can almost smell ink. But somehow, I don't remember any lefties in that room. Maybe there were none. So many rules, so many specific right ways. Lefties might have been corrected and made to look the same as everybody else. I have been a righty all my life. It's natural for me. My way has always been the right way. When you are a norm and in a room full of people like you don't think about exceptions. You just be. But did the lefties, if there were any, ever think of explaining themselves? Ever think of trying to make their differences allowed? I can't help but wonder why Chinese written symbols, 汉字, are called characters. It may be to contrast with the letter symbols, the chicken intestine I am writing here, but doesn't character also mean who we are? The slow learning of Chinese characters and their meaning gives me a theory that, as a culture, we became introspective and indrawn. It shapes me to bestow patience, maybe, or a tendency to be silent. What's more to me is how Chinese writing bodily instructs me to conform. Every trace trained me to properly organize the word into a set box. My body doesn't tilt or lean, so the steadiness may ensure a character is squarely situated, evenly spread out, not too much to the left or right, just settle in the middle. Each word, each character has its own place, that box. I don't go outside of it, and I don't make a mess inside either. I, like anybody who writes Chinese freely, no longer need the box but know all too well how to maintain that center. There is an invisible box that keeps our characters in place, as if there is a voice whispering in our ears, stay in there. We write square characters. We are square characters. One day, the square and settle meets chicken intestine. The two incompatible worlds collide in the square and settle's mind. It suddenly makes sense to me why learning English felt safe when it was about grammar, as it gave me rules to follow, boxes of boundaries, if you will. When you enter an uncharted territory, you are eager to find rules. To me, I was, maybe still am, eager to look for boxes. Whiteboard, 风花雪月. English definition, wind, flower, snow, and moon. Tried poetry subject, effete language without substance. Love affair, romance is in the air, dissipated life. There was this whiteboard. In the early 90s, at age 19, I entered a competition and became a radio DJ, broadcasting to the Pearl River Delta. That career lasted for 12 years before I came to the US. In a common area along the hallway, before entering the live studio, routinely I walked by a mid-sized whiteboard on a side wall. Usually it was blank, but once in a while, a piece of paper would be secured to it with a magnetic pin. On it, it said things along the lines of what not to broadcast, followed by short descriptions, sometimes suggesting appropriate ways to say certain things, Mandarin as 普通话, common language, instead of 国语, national language, for example, because the latter was a Taiwanese phrase. Mainlanders shouldn't follow that. Oftentimes, upon new CD arrivals, the memo would indicate band songs, almost always from Taiwan and Hong Kong, as some lyrics were too liberal, even counter-revolutionary. The memo specified which song on an album we weren't supposed to play, so we would skip that track accordingly. Occasionally, the descriptions included events I did not know of, a coal miners' strike, a city hall protest, or the like. Mostly somewhere else in the country, since we Cantonese didn't protest, or so my world suggested. I didn't know they were happening until I saw the memo. Being in the media, you sense very quickly that you are acutely informed, but you aren't speaking about so much of what you know. Eventually, I owned an independent radio production company. I was not an employee of any stations, but I had access to all major ones in the area. All of them had whiteboards or other memos to remind us what and what not to do or say. I would look at the list, and my tongue would adapt to speak in the most appropriate way. The truth is, without these sensitive topics, I still had plenty to talk about. The non-political topics, so to speak, the effete 风花雪月, or topics of love, indulgence, and consumerism. My long-term radio partner and I created shows that achieved the highest ratings in the Pearl River Delta, talking about all those other things, laughing and joking from the broadcasting chair. My team and I also wrote commercials for clients, exchanging high-rating radio programs with agreed-upon minutes for commercials. One of my clients, A Western-style restaurant, a pillar of my business, always gave me the task of drawing customers into their fancy, dimly lit business during the Christmas and New Year's time, even Halloween. So my 风花雪月 feed topics were always about Western traditions. We also talked about luxury brand names that all rich Chinese people knew: Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Armani, and Rolex. Topics like this gave us higher and higher status and more money. The memo on the whiteboard was there to remind me what not to say, but later in my career, I knew, even without the memo, without the doubts, what not to say. I couldn't care less. I was still a quiet person, but in front of a microphone, I was able to speak, always eloquently and appropriately, to the public. I knew what my boundaries were, and if ever I was touching anything controversial, I would dance away. I was not forced to do it. I was just very good at staying inside that box. Long after moving to the US, I asked one of my mentors why I'd been hired to be a DJ in the first place. I don't know, 人靚聲甜 maybe. The word literally means a beautiful person with a sweet voice. I don't know about being a beautiful person since no one could see me on the radio, but I was praised for having a good voice at 19. I was praised for having a good voice at 26, and then still at 31. Recently, I was invited to attend a remote celebration of my radio partner's 30th anniversary of being on air. We started our radio career on the same day, which means if I had stayed in China, we would have celebrated being famous together for 30 years. The comments in the chat box, most notably, were, Ching Ching's voice is still so beautiful. It never occurred to me then. Why no one praised me for anything else? Did they remember anything I said? Do I remember anything I said? Maybe by luck, over the 12 years of my career, I said something, anything remarkable or memorable. It never happened. The thing is, I never asked why. I was born near the end of the Cultural Revolution. My parents and the generations before me endured everything from hunger and malnutrition to political turmoil. My older sister, in her prime teen years, instead of going to high school, was sent to work in the fields, in the period when Mao Zedong sent all city intellectuals for agricultural experiences. My brother, 10 years older than I, is 5 feet 6 inches tall, the same height as I am. We couldn't afford to buy eggs for your brother and your sister, my mom lamented. Your brother didn't have as much breast milk as you had as a baby and not much to eat growing up. My mom blamed herself for my brother's height, but it makes more sense to see what happened in the context of early 1960s China, when the Great Famine killed tens of millions of people. Although far away from those deaths, my family, together with the entire country, lived with food shortages. They say that hunger can alter our DNA, and the memory of starvation can affect future generations. The sorrow, more than the empty stomach, is buried deeply in our psyche. When I became old enough to understand, Mao died, and China began the surge of growth after Deng Xiaoping's open-door policy in 1978. The country gradually recovered from poverty and opened up to the world. From there, starting in the big cities, China became wealthier and wealthier, as did my family. I don't remember being poor, but I can't forget how people talked about poverty and appreciated their new life. Look, life has improved so much. We should thank our government for doing this for us. I grew up with this appreciation, singing songs to praise the Chinese government, Deng Xiaoping and the Chinese Communist Party, tracing characters, many loaded with meanings I never bothered to understand. I did not want to doubt anything. Let's move on. The past was heavy. Forward was what I wanted, what everyone wanted. Like our cat Mimi, I was tamed by material comfort. There was nothing money could not buy. I did not think about the protests that happened in front of the city hall. I did not bother. I did not wonder why there was a whiteboard telling me what not to do or say. I did not bother. I did not need to understand. It never occurred to me to understand why I was so good at speaking of some things, even beautifully according to my audience, but keeping my mouth shut about other things. I did not need to, have to, or want to think about them. What good would come of it for me? Being tamed, you may lose the ability to lift your arm, your body, your mind, or being tamed, you don't need this ability in the first place. Whew.
You're giving me chills. Really. It's, yeah, beautiful, Ching Ching.
Thank you. I
This is so
remember shaking
powerful.
when I was writing that. Yeah,
Mm,
it's a it's a, sometimes it's good writing because it gives you the same physical
yes.
sensation. Mm.
Yes. Yep.
Should I continue or should we talk?
Do you want to talk?
Sure.
Let's talk because that's, yeah, let's talk a little bit because
Yeah.
there's more. But you're like, I keep, I had so much trouble figuring out what I wanted you to read from this because I felt greedy. I'm like, but then there's this part and then there's that
Thank
part.
you.
But this is so powerful because we see this recognition of a human being suddenly looking back at all these things that
Mm.
we accept and don't question, and then you suddenly start
Mm.
going, why didn't I ask about the protests, or what is the nature of what we do, or why is there a whiteboard to begin with? And when did you start asking yourself those questions?
Not until I was in the graduate program of communication studies
Wow.
when we were um, talking about, I think
This is
in
in
California, I
California
think it's
then,
like
right? Yeah.
2013, 14, 15, those times when we were like, every day you were surrounded by people who love to talk about intellectual things. And I was, it's like, I mean, stimulated is understatement. I was like really deeply into all this intellectual thinking, but then I started to be like, okay, that's the textbook, but then I started to see that it's related to my own life. That is very, very scary. That was
Mm,
I think awareness is something I always talk about this with my students. I mean, when it's in the good days and when my students I know that they get it. And I ask them this question: can you teach awareness? Um,
mm,
and it's a yes or no. I would say no.
right,
But awareness, once you are at the point of like waking up, you would never forget the trembling in your body. It's just, wow, I did not know that. And this is the world before and after.
right.
So, yeah, I totally remember what was the discussion about. And I was like myself shaking there. People don't understand why I was shaking because they were talking about all the other things, but I was thinking about my own things. Or I don't remember when I actually had a chance to share my own thought, but yes, I remember those feelings.
What do you remember what the turning point was, like the it of that discussion that turned it on for you? Or because I think that awakeness suddenly.
I do. So I even remember the number of the course. The name is called it's a 285. It's a course about research autoethnography. It's about writing culture. And then we were like writing, okay, how do you study culture and then how do you write these things? And then I was like writing like I am such a good student. I follow in, directions very well. And then I
Right.
say, okay, I think I can write about my experience in the radio. Um, and then I wrote about it on the piece of paper, but until when it's my turn to just share what I had, I found myself shaking
Mm,
that there was a white.
right.
But then I was like, this thing was so mundane. There was such a background that everybody, knew, but nothing, no big deal. But now I'm talking about it. It's like, oh my God, it's more than a whiteboard. It's symbolic in such a profound way that I need to talk about it. But then, like any heavy subject that you didn't you weren't aware, but now you suddenly feel like there's something you can't articulate so much then. It's like,
Right.
okay, that whiteboard, but then there was like I don't think I was able to complete the sentence so much, but I just described to them there was this whiteboard. um I think I was able to describe to them, but then the significance of it takes years to unpack.
Yeah, I love that because I think when you say it's like there's often this very mundane thing. It's like this tiny little what's the right word? Like totem or I can't think of the word for it at the moment, but like there's a little thing. It's
Yeah,
it's the symbolic
yeah,
thing that opens up this whole awareness, as you
yeah.
say, and you can't unsee it in a different way. I mean, some of my questions about the whiteboard, because obviously that was like a transformational or
Hmm.
transitional moment for
Hmm.
you. I think it's interesting that there were things that you were not allowed to talk about. Obviously, I mean, certainly having to do with political movements.
Hmm.
But you were allowed to talk about designer products and money
Yeah,
and the effete
yeah.
topics. And so my stereotypical version of what I have learned about China from
Hmm.
living in the West
Hmm.
is it's a communist country.
Hmm.
There is no wealth. There are no, not that there, I got, obviously there is, but what my
Yeah,
very naive question is like, how are all these Western,
yeah. Influence
uh, uh,
getting there.
luxury products there and available? And clearly, like, your job was to talk it all up.
Well, I mean, people who study political science can give a better answer, but my personal observation, because I was there, was okay. 1978 was the year Deng Xiaoping opened the door to the world.
Yeah,
That would mean that many of the border cities, like the coastal cities, including Guangzhou, they opened first, right? Usually, that's what happened historically.
right.
And then I was in there. I was in that area, and then you see products flooding in starting in
Wow. Right.
1980s. And it's, just imagine, I always, you can actually paint a picture between the bluish, you won't say black and white because mostly the Cultural Revolution is like a dark blue hue of everything, and then now it's colorful
Right.
because of all the products flooding in. And I was 10 years old, you know
Yeah.
I was pre-adolescent, and that's, I can see that. How do you say that kind of pants that is flare, that
Oh, bell bottoms.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
bell
I think we
bottoms.
can
Yeah.
see those pens, and there was a cartoon, uh, characters there. It was like so colorful, so cute, and I was 10, 13, whatever. So
Right.
seeing all the color, bright yellow. And when do you see the bright yellow products in the
Mm,
old world? And then
right.
that's the beginning of it, and then more and more. Deng Xiaoping also had the big slogan of "Let part of the country get rich first," right? So
Interesting. Yep.
that's pretty much capitalism is like, okay, we don't call this a capitalism. We
Right.
don't call,
Right.
yeah, we don't call this, but whatever, white cat or black cat, as long as this cat can catch rat, it's a good cat. So that's the way we say it, so that people start to get opportunity, to obtain a lot of um, financial, you know,
Material wealth
material
or yeah,
wealth and become richer and richer. And then they, what do you do? What do they do? From not having any material goods to want to have the best in the world. That's
right.
when you can
Yeah,
see Chanel
being
and Louis Vuitton. The long line of Louis Vuitton outside of, like, the Paris and anywhere in the world. It's us. It's Chinese people.
oh, I yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, and so to see and learn about that
yeah.
more individually is for me, a much more immediate way to grasp the
I
history of
I
two
have a lot
countries
to talk.
and the
If
culture.
if you- if the podcast is 5 hours, I can talk
Yeah.
about I can talk about how spending money, so many people around me spending money to acquire material good. It's a big it's an act of covering a lot of emptiness. It's
Yeah.
in my mind, that's what it is, what they're doing. And then
Yeah.
to me, it's a product of the long cultural revolution, really killing intellectual thinking. It's
Mm,
just like getting it's like an entire country's cultural traditional foundation, just like remove them, and then they were like feeling nothing underneath them, and now they
yes.
have money. What do you do?
Yeah. I
Oh, I think
know.
I can buy a lot of expensive things so that I look good.
Right.
That's what I see. That's what I see that is happening. I mean, I didn't see it. I now see it.
Right.
Reflect back then.
Yeah, it's very interesting because on one hand, who is anyone to say that coming out of poverty is
Yeah,
not a very good thing? But it also is, interesting to me because looking back at the prior part that you wrote about the characters, and this was the traditional Chinese characters and then
mm,
the simplified Chinese characters, and the comparison between a culture or a country where there was 20% literacy
yeah,
rate
yeah,
with a much more complex and rich written language
yeah.
towards an 80 to 90% literacy rate, which is obviously you say that's better.
Simplify.
But with a simplified sense of language. And that was, I mean, yeah, you just go, okay, well, what does this
What does it
say?
say? Yeah. I mean, I see. We're talking about a case of Chinese character turning from traditional to simplify, but then I feel like human connections as well. Uh,
Yeah,
Now we're information overload, in the area of information overload. I guess we have to simplify a lot of things in order to, interact
yes, right,
efficiently. Otherwise,
right.
so that's it. Yeah,
I was gonna say we can't always have that depth of more complex communication.
yeah,
But what are we losing when we get rid of it altogether?
that's it.
I totally hear and feel you with that one.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
yeah,
from the society point of view, right, it looks like it's a good thing because, it functions better, right? It functions better with all these its information, and everybody is part of this machine running. So
yeah,
we run fast as a machine so that, everybody has their part of it, but only superficially. That's what I see it. Yeah.
right, right. Can I ask you to read the last little part?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I want to make sure we get a chance to hear that too. So,
Okay. Let's do that.
where do we go to? Where we left off with, why do you move to this country?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
The question of why do you move to this country arises when people learn about my life in China, being a radio DJ, managing my own radio production company, owning a couple of luxurious products, and so on. You had a good life. Why are you here? I trip over this question every time. What do you mean, why? My initial thought. But the bigger impulse is, why am I even asked? The why here question is loaded as such since the US is the country of opportunity. Why? It just is. Of course we want to be here. But like all grand narratives, it principally defines our tendency to make this move. It has already characterized us, including our reasoning. My inherent thought from this biggest family legacy is through their exhaustive effort to come up with stories to justify valid reasons to come here, must have already spoken for me, my intent, a representation overarching enough I could just take it all in, slip in their shoes, and walk into my future dream. Those stories are given to us so we don't have to think for ourselves, so we can move on to do those more important things, like being in a system that functions, like belonging to a hierarchy, social, political, gender, and all normative ones predetermined for us. We are properly in place. This sounds nice as any simplicity sounds nice because it's easy, until we actually want the mundane, including the unquestionable questions revealed. We begin to see an open field so vast we gasp, how come I didn't see this before? How come I never asked? We can't help but to embark on the long road of contemplation. It always begins with a but. But if I had to assert reason, I come to think of a passenger seat experience. The vehicle is going in a direction and you're in it. The key is you aren't driving. Initially, you may know why you're in the car, but you were only a child. I was only a pre-adolescent when I was put in the passenger seat and eventually carried to America. We had a driver or drivers. There was always main and assistant driver switching between my father and my brother, but nonetheless, I was never in charge, not even in the front row seat. I was in the back, all the way back, watching everyone excited about the journey and talked about how to transport everyone there like luggage the entire time. Not that I wasn't willing to be on the ride, I just never questioned it, especially when looking out, we were envied by everyone along the way who saw us in this ride, although sour grapes all agreed that America was superior, class, wealth, prestige, lifestyle, Hollywood, and even how cool it would look to speak English. How can you question this if there is a general consensus that it's a good thing, a great leap even, from where you left behind? In 1994, after about 10 years since my brother and my sister settled in the US, my parents received their green cards, but I had to wait. I could have come to the US with them if I were a few months younger. Here is something technical about the move. My brother applied for all three of our green cards for immediate relatives of US citizens. My brother became a citizen through marriage. The definition of immediate relatives is 1. The spouse of a U.S. citizen, 2. The unmarried child under 21 years of age of a U.S. citizen, or 3. The parent of a U.S. citizen if the U.S. citizen is 21 years of age or older. My parents were under the third category, and here is another important addition. Unmarried children under the age of 21 may qualify as derivative beneficiaries, which means could be tagged along. INA defines a child as a person who is both unmarried and under 21 years old. When my parents were approved for their immigration status, I was a few months too old to receive a green card alongside them. Basically, I aged out after all the years of waiting. All my family could do was to restart a new process for me immediately. I-130 petition as the unmarried son or daughter over age 21 of a U.S. citizen or green card holder. That would make me wait in line again for longer to get my green card. In 1994, I did not know what longer meant. I was told 3 years, then later learned it would be 5 years. 5 years max, they said, but then the wait ended up being 9 years. I was drawn into Andre Aciman's book, Homo Irrealis, that contemplates an idea so foreign but so riveting to me. the idea of conditional and subjunctive mood. Would have, should have, could have, and might have, or maybe ought to have, are all the most difficult sentences for me to write and to utter in this language. It's part of the English grammar I have the most trouble with to find a Chinese equivalent. The closest translation to all of them is 本应, as in things were supposed to be, and no apparent difference among would, should, could, might, ought, unless I go in lengths to spell out the nuances. In the flight of most expressions, we never have the time to slow down, so we use the expression or we don't. I don't yet know the way to construct such sentences without thinking hard. At times, even if I seem to say things this way, it sounds unnatural even to myself.
This
Oh,
this when I read this, Ching Ching, this blew my mind. I mean, I think that as well-formed adults, most of us understand that different languages represent different cultures, and the way that language works within a culture imbues meaning or just the wherewithal, like the stuff that we exist in
mm,
within a
mhm,
culture. But
mm,
the idea when you said about how just the concept of a I can't say it,
subjunctive.
subjunctive tense
Yeah,
doesn't exist in a language. I mean, wow.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't exist. Uh, but if you really have to describe that, it's not impossible. You have to be like,
Yeah,
okay, explain it in length, but not one word or one
right.
grammar structure to hold it. There's no such a thing for us.
And then we're back to our same problem of like not having enough time to delve into something a little more deeply to understand something more
Yeah,
fully. And so we have a shorthand. And I'm looking back at what was the phrase that you had said that does exist. We're supposed to be,
yeah,
which is an interesting one. Just saying that. Actually, I just got chills thinking about that because in your story, I feel like everything that we heard so far today gets us almost to what I would describe as page one of what your story is.
hmm,
And so, talk about having to have tremendous cultural context, backstory, not just cultural, but family as well, which we've like sort of
hmm,
barely even touched the iceberg of your family interactions and what that was like for you in the whole in bringing the whole family to this country.
hmm,
Like that all gets us to your one question, which to me is almost the starting point of your book, which is why did you come here at the age
yeah,
32 and how you got hit by this question. And again, one of those moments where awareness comes to
yeah,
you in such a visceral way, like, what do you mean? Like
yeah.
to not even think about that question. Anyways, oh,
Michelle, this is one of those writings that reminds me again, I cannot not explain. Not only because this is something that is interesting to other people, is that I did not have the awareness at all that is interesting.
yeah,
I mean, I really didn't think about, I did not think that I should write about to explain why I come to this country until people like they were so it was like the biggest question, that's the biggest elephant in the room, and you didn't write that. And
right.
I was like, oh, so those are the earliest chapters. That is like, oh my goodness, I have to, tackle all these things that I didn't know I should explain and explain them thoroughly so that I can actually start to tell my
Yes,
story.
exactly. That's
So,
why there was so
yeah,
much about this that I was like, well, I want to get to that thing and I want to get to that thing. But if we don't
yeah,
have this foundation, we can't even get to the other parts. And it's a lot of explaining about explaining.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, in the way that it's good because I don't have a shortage of shortages of material to write because I have so many questions. People ask me this and that, and they're curious about it. I did not know they're curious about it. so wonderful. Then it's not that I cannot write about them. It's I don't resent writing about things I need to explain.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's weird, especially the realist mood. It was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about coming to this country. If I were to come to this country at age 21, what would that happen? And
Right,
that was until I answered this question,
right.
because I really didn't think about it. I
Yeah,
was just like, well, okay, I had to wait because I had a great career and I was in the radio. I was la 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 doing things I enjoyed. I cannot come to America. Well, fine, there was nothing that really bothered me back then.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's a two different lives if I were to come here early, right? So,
Right. Well,
so that's yeah,
I didn't I had known of Andre Aciman, and after reading this part of your book, I went to listen to him. I actually listened to his audiobook a tiny bit, and that was look at you, she's pulling out 4
oh,
volumes of him. I know. I definitely have to look him up. It's
yeah,
fascinating, and the way
fascinating,
that he talks, I can see why you were so drawn to him because it's this international moving from one country to another and the wanderings and thinkings of that.
yeah.
Um, and so I was also wondering to that end of, have you thought about, I mean, when I think about a 12-year career in radio, have you thought about what your life in China would still be like today if you didn't come to the
Hmm.
US? What would
You
that
know,
unknown reality be?
so Michelle, there's another more interesting question here about
Okay.
radio. Is
Yes.
that without America, I might not even be able to pursue radio because my father arranged some very stable job for me to do, which is accounting. That's, the older you get, the better it is kind of job. You don't
Yeah.
age out, so to speak,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
woman.
Right.
So he had already arranged that for me. I was a good girl. I just follow whatever my father asked me to do. But I ran into this competition. I love radio, and I won it. I won the competition, and I became a radio host. And this is the thing, that it's impossible if America wasn't in the horizon, because my father would not allow this kind of strange career
Oh,
for me, to do.
wow.
But
Yeah.
America was there. I was supposed to
Right.
be leaving in the 3 years, five, whatever those
Right.
times.
It wasn't even
And
supposed
then
to
you
be that
just do
long.
whatever. And then I brought money in right away, because that is way more money than accounting. And my father was like, okay, do whatever you want. And also at that time, that's pretty much the time that they left for America anyway. So
Right.
half of the time they weren't here for me. So thanks to America, I have to say. Otherwise,
You
I
were
don't
able to
know.
have that career.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah,
kind of, oh,
yeah.
it's all
Everything is,
very so weird, circular. Exactly.
yeah,
Wow.
totally. I don't think I was able to even fight for my right to pursue radio. I was such a free spirit at that time.
Yeah.
America is gonna happen. So what I do is I'm gonna just have fun. There's just nothing. It's unusual for Chinese people. Let me tell you. What do you mean by having fun? There is something you just have to do. You labor your life basically. Yeah.
Work hard.
I was like, yeah. I I do what I want to do, because eventually I'm going to drop everything here and then just go, and it just,
Right.
so I had fun. And really, this is the biggest thing that America caused, uh,
Right.
uh,
Right.
the period of me being such a free spirit person. I
Wow.
mean, looking back, I can explain that, but
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And that was another thing that had struck me as somewhat ironic or informed by the negative space of the place you were in,
Mm,
because later in the manuscript you talk about a society, a culture where every expectation is based on the collective and working together, and how the individual is not even
not important.
sort of given any kind of credence whatsoever. Yet,
Mm,
when you were in China, you were this very independent and individualistic free spirit, as you say.
Yeah.
And then once you waited and waited and waited and were
Mm-hmm.
able to rejoin your family in
Yeah.
America, the land of opportunity, where
Mm-hmm.
you think, why would we even have to explain why we were going there? Now you're back with your family and it's back to the collective
Yeah.
expectations,
Yeah. That's
if
the book.
that's okay for me to suggest.
Yeah. 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 Totally. Yeah. That's it. But with the backdrop of America,
Yeah.
the a solid tradition, at least is shaken. It is not shattered. Since we came, because first of all, we weren't all in the same place. I
Right.
came here. I came
Right.
to join with my brother. It's not like really reunion. It's really
Right.
joining brother. Two of us actually for a period of time. I never thought about joining my sister because my sister wasn't, between the two, financially, my brother was more capable of doing that.
Right.
So I joined my brother. Yeah, that's another thing, right? So what if I joined my sister? It would be in New York and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Everything is
I
different.
know. Right.
It just never occurred to me to come to New York. And then my parents, finally I came, and then they were like, "What do we do? Where do we want to stay?" Right? So that's another thing that was actually the point and on. It was like a family drama for 10 years to fight, to talk about who
Yeah.
they should live with. And my parents also were getting old and think about the
Yeah.
money, where do this money
Right.
go distribute.
Yes.
Oh, that was,
Right.
I only write part of this, um, the struggle, but it's the main thing basically for 10 years and on since I came.
Right. So once you have sort of the goal is to
Hmm.
get all family members here, and as you wrote in that last part, what you thought was supposed to be 3 years and then 5 years turned into 9 years. So
Hmm.
then these time clocks have, like, ticked on and on. You're finally at the point where you have joined your family in
Yeah.
the US, in California, and it's sort of like, "Oh, okay, now what?" You know?
That's exactly the chapters that I titled it. I cannot change to anything else. It was like, this shouldn't be a chapter's name, but then it is a Chinese. This is my chapter's name. I'm here now. What? It's really that sentiment. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, so I just don't even know what to say next because it's like there's that's the beginning point, and can I just I'll say yet again for anyone listening who might be an agent, like this book, hello, this book needs to be in the world.
Oh, thank you so much
So,
for coming out. Yeah.
oh my God. What okay, so my question that I always have to ask everyone,
Hmm.
what was most daring about this? Now, I feel like having read your full manuscript, I feel like you might have one answer for your full manuscript, but for the sake of this conversation, what was most daring about writing just the parts that from what we heard today?
Um, I think the act of writing in English is okay. I think I'm going to try to complete this thought in a way that it should be just beyond the linguistic aspect. I, of course, every time I write, especially the earlier period when I started writing in English, I was like, my mind kept thinking, who do you think you are
Mhm.
that you can write in English? That was the voice in me. And then I was writing and riding. It's like riding the wave of the
Mm,
emotion
yeah.
of putting any words down. But then there was another daring things about it, I would say, is that at first I thought I was trying to overcome linguistic barrier, but once I noticed I was able to put down something that I could not imagine myself writing, and I thought the daring wasn't so much about language. It was telling stories that I was scariest. I was so scared. I was the most scared to tell. And actually, I was yesterday just reading another chapter that I was like, you know what? I'm going to just remove this. I just delete this chapter because it's so crazy. I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think this will, Michelle, I dare to say this could probably resonate with every memo writer here. Um,
Yeah.
because I really thought I was any different. I was thinking about overcoming linguistic barrier was the
Right.
most daring act. But it's, you know what? No, it's actually the story
It's actually the
itself.
story.
It's the story that the most scary part, that the scariest part of the story that I was like, oh my goodness, I just shouldn't say. But then you know what I have to
I
say,
know.
but
Right.
then I say it. So I think still that's everyone's
I
answer.
know. Yeah, I think it is. And I'm so glad you say it. It feels, I don't mean it to sound the way I even sound when I say it, but like this is just absolutely really beautiful and important. And I love what you have to say. I just love hearing what you have to say. And I am so glad we were in this class together. So,
I am so I don't know what we haven't seen each other in person
yeah,
yet. We've
we've
never
never met in person. We
we
shall.
haven't met in
We
person.
will. I feel certain of it at
We
some
should,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in this deep connection, I cherish this so much, Michelle. I appreciate this opportunity. And then having this conversation with you is just so nourishing.
Oh,
It's
thank
going to
you.
sustain a good amount of the writing time moving
I'm
forward because
so
writing is lonely and difficult and all that.
yeah, it is. It is. I know. Well, I am I'm very honored to say that. And it is very nourishing for me too, as is our friendship and our writing, collaborative stuff, whatever we've done. It's just been really fantastic. So I feel like we have to have you back to talk more about this, maybe because I feel like there's probably 10 other things I haven't gotten to yet. So there's plenty more we
Total,
could say, but thank you.
total, anything and everything, it's just such a joy, Michelle. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This was just such a fascinating conversation, and her writing is so compelling. I really think that the best ways to learn things about another culture, about other people, and to get our heads up high enough to grasp different perspectives of ourselves is through one-on-one conversations and hearing words from another human being slowly in real time. Let the words sink in. And if you can, listen again and again. You just may be surprised how much you hear something different the next time around, because you will be a different person. You can check out Ching Ching Tan's author website with links to her many essays and publications in our show notes. And after my own little reverie about Nicholas Slanimsky, I went digging through my closet and found a cassette tape of that hour-long feature I had produced. Phil, my husband, who also was a broadcaster for his whole career, had a working cassette player, and with much trepidation, I slid the cassette in, latched it shut, and hit play. Clearly, my little declaration about not being allowed on the air was wrong because I was the host for this piece. And after hearing myself, I don't think my superiors were incorrect to keep me off the air. Never would I have been a person for live on-air talent like Ching Ching was, but I didn't really want that job either. Anyway, it was so weird and fun to time travel back to my 1993 production and to hear Nicholas's voice and to remember the other people I had interviewed for that whole production. I would have been 27 when I took that trip out to LA. Not quite as young as I think I sound. What do you think? Here's a little clip.
In accepting his offer, Nicholas became Kusevitsky's rehearsal pianist. One of the greatest challenges the two undertook together was deciphering Stravinsky's score to The Rite of Spring. a piece that pushed Koussevitzky's conducting abilities at that time to the limit.
There was a difficulty, for instance, in a piece by Stravinsky, Le Sac du Printemps. You probably know, of course, about that piece. And he conducted it this way, ta-ta-tiraram, ta-ta-ta-tararam, making it 6 instead of 5, you see, because Stravinsky wrote it for 5, just cutting it short. Ra-ta-ta-ta-ra-ra, ta-ta-ta-ta-ra-ra, ta-ta-ta-ta-ra. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But Koussevitzky added an extra beat because it seemed to him that there was something wrong. He says ra-ta-ta-ta-ra. So he would stop, and he would call in German, he would call it Luftpause, that is a rest. But it shouldn't be any stop rest. The whole point in Stravinsky's pieces and in many others of modern music that you could stop. But Koussevitzky would do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh boy. Well, I have to say, it's so funny to hear myself at that point, but I still to this day can't get enough of Nicholas. I loved this story that he told about Koussevitzky having trouble with the count of 5 in that. It just totally cracks me up, and I love these stories. I can't get enough. Anyways, I'm not sure what next month will bring just yet, but what I can share is that Daring to Tell is going to be a proud sponsor of this year's Woodstock Book Fest in Woodstock, New York, one of the grooviest places you will ever go to, and with a vibe that feels very alive and relevant to this day, not at all a has-been place, though of course its history lives on. The Book Fest is taking place April 3rd through the 6th, so if you are at all inclined, please check it out. Martha Frankel is the festival's director, and she is a force, let me tell you, who you will be able to hear for yourself because I'm going to be having her on for a special bonus episode coming up within the next month or so. There is a link in the show notes as well for you to check out the Woodstock Book Fest, so I hope you will look at that. That is it for February. My requests for you: please follow this podcast so it will pop into your podcast app's queue when it drops on the first Tuesday of each month. Listen to a back episode if you've just discovered it, and please share an episode with a friend or fellow writer or reader. Sign up for my newsletter called The Redo, which also comes out just once a month, my own musings about some aspect of the episode that didn't occur to me until after the red light went off. My thank you again to Ching Ching Tan for her words and conversation, to my wonderful husband, Phil Rado, who is the musician for our theme music called Make Me Brave. And most of all, my heartfelt thanks to you for your king ear, 10 eyes with 100% attention and focus, and your one heart for that most precious of gifts, listening. I'll catch you next month.
And nothing's gonna break my fall. There's nothing in the protocol. It's like swimming up waterfall or taking away the ground. Taking away the ground. It's like taking away the ground.